So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
And a good Monday morning to you, ladies, gentlemen, fanatics of all ages. Welcome to Phillies Therapy here on Monday, June the 30th, the final day of June 2025. I am Paul Boyer, joined as always by the Athletics' Matt Gelb. Stay tuned after we do our windbag hot air thing for a special guest a little later this episode. Charlotte Varnes of the Athletic, the newest addition to the Phillies beat, and Matt's coworker, begrudgingly, will join us for a quick little chat about her time on the Phillies beat. But before we get to Charlotte and the really nice conversation that we had with her, we have a baseball team to talk about. The Phillies are 49-35 after taking 2 of 3 in Atlanta over the weekend, which was very nice to see. This followed up a 3-game sweep in a really, I would say, hard-fought set of pitchers' duels in Houston. Some good, some bad. The offense, I know you'd never like to see a team score 1 run in 3 games, but they also held the Astros to 5 runs. You know, it's like, it's not all bad. The strength of this team continues to be its starting pitching, and that has been excellent, including Sunday's winner, Ranger Suarez, who continues to just absolutely dazzle since he got the rust out in his first start back from the injured list. But the Phillies, thanks to the Mets' maladies, are a game and a half up in the National League East. They sit a few games behind the Dodgers for the top record in the league and are 3.5 games up on a playoff spot entering play on Monday. They are only 13-13 here in the month of June, but that is enough to give them a game and a half lead in the division. And with that, I bring in my co-host. He is the aforementioned Matt Gelb. Matt, hello. Welcome back from the road trip. How are you?
Congrats to the Pittsburgh Pirates on winning the National League East.
Yeah, the transitive property, sweeping both the Phillies and the Mets. They have won the National League East. Congrats to Pittsburgh.
I don't know how we're going to remember June yet, Paul, because we got to see how the rest of this thing goes. But you said 13-13, and I think it was a month of survival for sure, and that's reflected in the 13-13 record, although they had a pretty, they were plus 19 runs.
Okay.
21 runs. I'm bad at math. Plus 21 runs in June, despite a 500 record. And I guess a lot of that is, the 13-0 blowout the other night of the Braves.
Sure.
But I think how I look at June right now in this moment is that they probably squandered a chance to really pad their lead against the Mets, because the Mets are clearly going through it. They've already had their big team meeting and talked a lot about it, and then lost big time on Sunday, the day after the meeting, and they were outscored 30-4 against the Pirates. At least when the Phillies were swept by the Pirates, they had 3 1-run losses. Not that there's any consolation there, but it was a little more competitive. So I think the Phillies bullpen is hanging on by a thread, and the fact that they got through June relatively unscathed, are in first place, have a very solid record, is something that they should be pleased with.
Yeah, and we can maybe talk about the Mets in just a minute here, but some of what is transpiring here with this team is absolutely right. It is dangling. There is a precipice here that the team is sort of walking along while we get to the end of July, or try to make it to the end of July, really to get to the All-Star break and buy this pitching staff a few days rest, at least those who won't be going back to Atlanta for the All-Star game. It really does help that we continue to see this team's excellence relies on its starting pitching, because even with Aaron Nola out for, his continued absence here, and we'll see how long that actually ends up being.
And again, we should not underplay that. I mean, like,
Right.
I know he wasn't Nola at the beginning of the season, but the fact that they've done what they've done with little to zero contribution from Aaron Nola is truly remarkable. It really is. It's probably not appreciated enough.
Probably not, but it is a case of maybe the longer this goes on, the more it's a you don't know what you have till it's gone kind of thing. I don't know, especially as this team churns through, relievers at the back end of this bullpen here right now.
It's just all about survival right now.
Yeah, we're featuring Max Lazar and Daniel Robert in semi-prominent
Lazar
roles.
threw a great inning in Houston.
He did, and
it's probably his best inning of the year.
Yeah. Everybody else, apart from Orion Kirkring and Matt Strom, who escaped with the save.
I would not lump Strom with Kirkring right now.
Yeah, Kirkring is throwing the ball the best. Strom got the save in the final game in Atlanta, but everybody else right now is just and I'll leave it at that.
It just comes back to what we've talked about. I mean, there's just not enough swing and miss.
Yeah.
Just not enough swing and miss. Jordan Romano and Joe Ross, and it's just Matt Strom. I mean, there's just not enough. There's not enough swing and miss. There's just not enough, and that's what they're hunting here in July as they look to make a trade for one or two relievers.
All right. So we have a homestand coming up here starting Monday today, 3 against the San Diego Padres, who are not having the best offensive run of their own right now. Manny Machado is in a very cold streak, and then Cincinnati, who continues to have more position players than they know what to do with. They can hit the ball a little bit.
They got some pitching.
And they do have a little bit of pitching now. Brady Singer, I think, is still having a nice year for them. They're an interesting team. They are a team that could cause some problems. We'll see the Reds in Philadelphia for the July 4th weekend. Matt, do we think that the All-Star break is a good checkpoint for this team to reach in terms of hopefully resetting its pitching staff, giving them a break? We figure Zach Wheeler will probably go unless he starts the final game in San Diego on July the 13th. But that's probably not going to be enough to really give the team too much of breathing room heading into even that first series after the break leading up to the trade deadline, right?
No, I mean, they get a day off. They've got the next 2 Thursdays off, which will help them a little bit. But these next 4 series are against decent teams. You got 6 against the Padres, 3 against the Reds, and 3 against the Giants, and it includes, there's a West Coast trip there before the break. So, I mean, you're really just going to have to step on the gas with your starters again, and we saw them do that with Ranger Suarez, who, he pitched incredibly well. Is there any concern on your end, Paul, the fact that he threw 3 pitches at 90 miles an hour?
A little bit. I think this is something, I don't know. It feels like something we'd look at with all pitchers lately, right? Like how hard are they throwing, just as a measure of is there reason to be concerned?
And I know velocity is less important for him than it is other pitchers. Right. Nevertheless,
he's still got 13 swings and misses, which is great. Anytime he hits double digits in that category, you're feeling pretty good. And he limited the Braves, who are clearly offensively compromised, to just the 1 run on the solo home run by Sean Murphy. I always kind of live on the edge with anybody who throws that light.
I mean, especially Suarez, just given his just given his recent history. I mean, and like there were times where it looked like he was, I won't say if he was hurt, he wouldn't have pitched 7 innings. I mean, it clearly, like, there was a time where Thompson and other coaches and trainers had asked Suarez after an inning, like, are you good? Are you good? Are you good? And he was good. He threw 96 pitches, but I don't know. I mean, there's been starts this year where he's had, a little more juice, and then there's been other starts where he has, and he's like, well, he usually just says, well, I didn't have my best stuff today, but I made it work. And this is crazy to me, Paul. Like, there are since the beginning of the 2022 season, okay, so 3.5 seasons now, there have only been 4 starting pitchers who have pitched 7 innings in 5 straight starts. No other qualifiers, just 7 innings, 5 straight starts. Suarez has done it in his last 5. He's the only pitcher who has done it this season in the Major League Baseball, which is wild to me. The only other pitchers were Nathan Eovaldi, who did a 5-game streak in 2023. So no pitcher did it all last season either.
Wow.
And then Aaron Nola had an 8-game 7-inning streak
Mhm.
in 2022,
Mhm.
and Sandy Alcantara in 2022 had a 13-game 7-inning streak, a 13-start 7-inning streak.
Yeah,
which
when
is
he was out of
amazing.
his mind.
Yes, but that's that's unbelievable. I mean, the fact that again Suarez, and maybe Suarez might be the most impressive to have done it because he threw 3 pitches at 90 miles an hour in his start on Sunday.
Well, and I look at we like to focus on pitch counts too, right? He's doing these 7-inning starts. The most pitches he's thrown is 101 when he pitched into the 8th inning against Houston.
Yes.
Which
has been Jesus Luzardo's sort of kryptonite of late, is that he's gotten outs and he's managed, the start against the Braves, he really pulled a few Houdiniacs there and it ends up looking fine, but it was only 5 innings because he's needed a lot of pitches. He's run some deep counts, and it hasn't made him less effective. It's just made him less valuable because he hasn't been able to pitch 6-7 innings on a consistent basis here.
Yeah. So I think the short answer is I'm not so worried, not more than usual, about Ranger, even if he's throwing a little bit lighter, because he's been efficient, which means, lower stressful pitches. If you want to measure by, times guys are on base, he's, not just allowing few runs, he's allowing few base runners in these 7,
and not just that, think about how much, it's very little hard contact. He gave up the 2 sole homers in his last 2 starts, and every other ball I feel like that was put in play was like soft, bloop, whatever, lazy, rolled over ground ball. Like there's never hard contact against this guy.
He's doing like the left-handed Kyle Hendricks in his prime kind of thing where, but he's even striking out. He is still striking guys out.
I know. And he said he swings and misses.
So I am not worried about him just yet. I'm always in the background a little worried because of his injury history. Sure. I don't think that's going to go away. But right now,
that's why committing to him on a long-term deal remains and always will be a risky proposition. You just don't know. And there will be teams, somebody will, because even if he's a 140 inning pitcher a year and does it well, there's that's worth a lot of money. There's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll reconnect with the Rangers situation in the winter for sure. I don't think that's
one last question before we move on. The playoffs start tomorrow, Paul. Okay. Is Ranger Suarez in your postseason rotation or your postseason bullpen? The playoffs start tomorrow. Knowing what you know and having the players that you have, you don't have Nola. Let's just assume the playoffs start tomorrow.
Yeah, he's probably my game 3 starter after Wheeler and Sanchez.
I think that's right.
Yeah. But on the less rosy side of things, on the maybe slightly cloudier forecast, we have the outfield. Rated high on our concernometer a couple weeks ago. Hasn't really improved since then, unfortunately. And now we've got a little bit of vocal discontent to add to the mix. Max Kepler, who has not started against a left-handed pitcher in a long time, seems to feel as though he was misled by the team, told he would be the starting left fielder, and is not happy with the actual playing time he has received so far this year, or at least seems, again, discontent. All this comes as Kepler has posted a 676 OPS this year, good for an 85 OPS plus. He has 9 home runs and 14 doubles on his season total. He is third on the team in walks, which is nice, but all of that just results in a 302 on base because he's not really hitting the ball super hard. And all of this is just conspiring to create kind of a messy situation. And Max Kepler, at the end of the day, unless something changes soon, may not exactly play his way into more playing time with this team. That is a tap dancing way of saying things
the
might
clock
change.
Is ticking.
Yeah. It's not looking great. He voiced his displeasure earlier in the week and followed up by not really performing super well. So the timing didn't exactly boost him either. It was kind of like the Mets team meeting that we just mentioned a few minutes ago. Matt, it's a little bit unusual to hear about any kind of disgruntled players lately in this era of, the Rob Thompson helm of the Phillies. He usually seems to do a pretty good job of massaging this, of making guys feel as though they're getting enough looks relatively. We've heard Nick Castellanos has been displeased with his spot in the batting order, or Taijuan Walker, of course, didn't really love that he didn't pitch in the 22 postseason. Bryson Stott has wanted a little more playing time too, but none of them have really seemed as upset by their situation. Maybe Walker comes close as Kepler here with this left field. What is the deal here? And is there any way this ends amicably outside of Kepler playing better?
Probably not. I mean, I don't think there's like discord here. Like, I don't think there's like a massive issue. I mean, I think
that's good.
Certainly, I think there's some disappointment in, from the management side about what Kepler said, but he's being honest. And I think Rob Thompson's perspective is that I have basically played him every day, and he hasn't, but he has started, a lot of the games. Like, it's like 62-ish out of 80. 4. I mean, like, it's up there. Like, and I get like his frustration. I think Kepler's biggest frustration is that he sat for 4 days, and it was 3 games over a 4-day span with an off day in there that he didn't play. And he's talked about how he feels like he is a rhythm guy, and so has Stott. I mean, so is Marsh. I mean, those guys, of course, every guy on a major league roster wants to be an everyday player.
Of course.
That's not, that shouldn't come as any surprise. But the counter to the Kepler thing is just play better, and he hasn't. And I think, just looking at it, I mean, he hasn't had an extra base hit since June 16th now. He's 4 for 33 in that stretch, and one of those hits came against position player Luke Williams pitching. So he's got 3 singles in the last 2 weeks, basically. And I don't know, Paul. I mean, like, I think they're getting closer and closer and closer to Justin Crawford here. And whether or not he's ready or not, I don't know that he'll ever be ready, because we're never going to find out that much more about him at AAA, because there's such a chasm between AAA and the major leagues right now. And Crawford has continually performed as a minor leaguer, with the caveats that it may not work in the major leagues because of his swing and his very unique skill set. But that said, I think they're getting closer and closer to making a call there. And I'll say this too, is that had Gabriel Rincones Jr., who was that spring standout and a lot of gushing stories and talk about him, had he performed at AAA for the first few months of the season, he would have already been in the majors and might have already displaced Kepler in left field. Rincones has not done that. In fact, he's had a really disappointing AAA season so far. His numbers against lefties are brutal. He's obviously, like, his projection is that of a platoon player in the major leagues, and we'll see whether he ever gets that chance. But I mean, he has not merited a call up yet, and I don't think is on their radar. In fact, I think they would go to Crawford before Rincones, just because Crawford has produced in the minor leagues this season. So, they get 3 righties in this Padres series. And then I believe we'll start the Red series with 2 lefties. So I don't know if this is something they do before the All-Star break. I don't know if it's something they do before they go out west. But if Kepler doesn't have a decent week, I kind of think there could be a change there. And do you think that's a overreaction? Do you think that they should stick it out with Kepler? Do you think that they should just bench Kepler and play Otto Kemp out there every day in left field when Harper comes back? I don't know. I don't think that Kemp is the answer out there, for what it's worth.
It doesn't seem like there is an easy answer, which is a little bit unfortunate. But we're definitely crossing into the Josh Harrison, Whit Merrifield event horizon here in late June, coming into July, where the numbers are what they are, and they tell more of a story after 3 complete months of baseball. Correct. I am in the camp of, I do not know what Justin Crawford will be as a major league player, but you're right. It is becoming impossible to overlook that he has just produced at AAA. And if we are looking at this as a meritocracy,
right. But also, like, yes, the expectation has to be, like, when he comes up, like, the expectations have to be appropriate.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, when he comes up, if and when he comes up, he bats 9th. Okay. He plays either left or center. His center, it depends on who you talk to. There's people who think his center is okay. There's other people who think he's just athletic enough to make up for some bad reads in center. Fine. But he's not here to save this offense. He's not here to save this lineup. He's not going to do that. But he gives them a different look batting 9th, and maybe he creates some things and gets on base for the big guys at the top. I mean, that has to be the tempered expectation, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he missed a little bit of time here in June, but on the whole, he's walked more than he's struck out. He's hitting 344. He hit
He's done
378
everything. Like you
in
said,
May.
before I cut you off, it's a meritocracy,
Yeah.
and he's done everything down there. Whether you think it's going to work or not, he's done everything down there to warrant this consideration.
And one of the big things is smaller sample alert here because it's only 60 plate appearances, but against left-handed pitching, he's only struck out 10 times. He's hitting, 426. A lot of that is Abbott fueled because it includes no home runs, but he does have 7 extra base hits, 4 doubles, 3 triples. He has held his own at the very least, right? Like, and he's not a guy who's expected to provide a lot of slug. I know that's kind of a point of consternation with the lineup as a whole. If Justin Crawford gets total bases, it'll be from stretching and getting doubles and triples. I would not expect him to really, I don't think he'll even do the Rafael Marchand thing where he just has major league power, after not really hitting a whole lot of home runs in the minor leagues. Like you said, he is not an offensive savior, but he could be something of a spark plug, if you want to think of it that way. It's something to change things up, because right now it feels a little stale, Matt. The pitching is great, but the offense, there is just something so uneven outside of Trey Turner, who continues
to play. It's in the middle
of
the lineup. It's the middle of the lineup. And the staleness is that Bryce Harper hasn't been there, and Bryce Harper, we believe, is going to be back Monday. If not Monday, then Tuesday. So it's that middle of the lineup. It's that now Bryce comes back, and now he's hitting third, and everyone else drops down a spot. And still, like, you're 4 through 7, you need one of these guys to do something. And like, I know Alec Boehm, it's probably not right to lump him in with some of these other guys because he has generally done things. But out of that Castellanos, Real Muto, Kepler, Stott bucket, somebody's got to do something. And Castellanos, hot and cold, like, with the defense is essentially, they're essentially running replacement level corners right now. Is that being too critical? Like, I feel like left and right field right now for them are replacement level, and they're spending about $30 million on that replacement level production.
Well, it's almost as if Kepler and Castellanos are split players, where Kepler plays pretty good defense out in left field, but hasn't provided much of an offensive spark. And Castellanos,
I thought the defense would be better. Honestly, it's just been okay.
Okay, yeah, that might be a fair assessment. And then out in right field, we have Castellanos, who is hitting well for the season.
One of the worst defenders in baseball.
Yeah, and we're seeing ping pong back and forth now. Just switching gears over to right field here. Castellanos had a bit of a grumble about being lifted for defense. Came back the next day, made a Game 7 catch, and then hasn't really been lifted since, except in a blowout.
Hard to believe he was left in the game Sunday.
What is the approach here? Like, is this all? Is this all about managing his personality right now to try and minimize the number of guys who are displeased? I guess, like, one battle at a time.
I think the manager is trying to manage personality, but also trying to make the front office deal with this.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, you don't like it when it reaches quote unquote cry for help level, and maybe that's not quite what this is. But if you have,
I don't think it's a cry for help, but I think.
But if a manager is sending signals,
the limitations here. I have a question. I was thinking about this last night, Paul. This is going to sound crazy.
Oh, here we go.
Are the Phillies better right now with Castellanos as DH, Schwarber as the left fielder, and Kepler or someone else as the right fielder?
I want to say no, that it would be the same.
I want to say yes. Yeah, it's probably about the same. And the trade-off is that if Schwarber is your left fielder, then you would have, if you're going for defense late, you're taking Schwarber's bat out of the lineup and not Castellanos' bat. But it's rare when you take a guy out for defense that it ends up, his you end up needing him to bat, right? That's
fair.
I almost think they'd be a little better with Schwarber left as opposed to Castellanos and right.
Well, maybe that's true because the
Schwarber's
last
left
time we
field is
saw,
not, and Schwarber's not left field is not great. I'm
well,
fully
yeah,
acknowledging that.
but the last time we saw him get regular run out in the outfield, he was
He
playing
had a
on
bad
compromised
knee.
legs.
Right. He was in worse shape for sure. Why you watch it? Look at the guy scamper. He's got 8 stolen bases here. He's obviously in
He's a
better
good
shape.
base runner this year. Yeah.
He's obviously in better shape. And now does that mean he's a better left fielder? Probably not. But is he a better left fielder than Castellanos is right fielder? I think yes.
Well, with the
I
added
think
potential benefit
so.
of moving Kepler over for as long as he remains on the roster,
Kepler or Crawford,
or
whoever you want to put out in right field. Yeah.
Yeah. What about Crawford in center and Marsh in right? Would they play Marsh in right in any configuration in this future world?
Probably, I guess. Yeah, I guess I don't. Yeah, I would assume that yes, Crawford
3 left-handed hitting outfielders
grades out as a better center fielder than Marsh. It's got to be close, I would imagine.
All right, so let's reel it back in just real quick here. What can Max Kepler do in the next 2 weeks? Let's say up until the All-Star break is the window we're looking at right now, and it may be shorter and it may be longer. What can he do to keep his spot on the team?
Hit for power against righties.
And
so it's not overcomplicated.
Yeah, and with the
and like so there's underlying stuff, Paul. I mean, like he is walking at a better rate than he has in his career.
Yeah.
He's hitting the ball harder than he has at an average rate than he has in his career.
Yeah.
There's some good underlying stuff there, but to your point, we're halfway through the season now, and how much do you have to read into the actual results as opposed to the underlying stuff? Because this is a 1-year contract and you are a team with expectations. And this is a area where, maybe it's time to go for an upgrade.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that says a mid-season cut is on the table, or DFA.
Sure. And also track record wise, I mean, like this guy, 2023 is an outlier, but his season in 2025 isn't that far off from what he did in 21, what he did in 22, and what he did in 24.
Yeah. Yep. The Phillies clearly hoped that they could get something a little bit closer to 23 with the offseason procedure that he had, and it just has not translated. It hasn't translated. It hasn't worked. Just as they thought they could get a little bit of something out of Jordan Romano bouncing back from an injury, just as they thought they saw something from Joe Ross's bullpen sample. These things haven't quite worked out, these 1-year deals.
What would it take for the outfield to become a more pressing, or the offense to become a more pressing trade need than the bullpen? Is that even possible?
Probably not, but I could see a world in which a need for a fit on offense stays important. I don't know if it's ever going to match the level, just because the depth, I think, and we were just talking about the lineup depth, and it's not fantastic right now, but the bullpen depth is worse. It is in a worse state than the offensive depth right now. So I don't think it can get lapped, barring a worse injury, knock on wood. Hopefully it doesn't happen. I do think that there is something of a pressing need to find that offense. Maybe they feel as though, the organization feels as though the internal options and levers that they have left to pull there, i.e. Justin Crawford, buy them enough time where they don't have to think about it on that level. Right.
And isn't that why you'd want to do Crawford like soonish?
Yes.
Just to see. And you're not going to make decisions. You don't want to have to make decisions based on, a 21-year-old's first 3 weeks in the majors.
Sure.
But maybe that you see something that you say, okay, maybe, this is good enough that it can work. We can go with this. Or you see enough where you're like, oh man, like we like this kid, but like, he's just not going to help us this year yet.
I would tell you this right now, fair or not, the subjective read I have on this lineup situation and, the bullpen situations both, is that if the Phillies were riding into the playoffs today with these configurations, I would not feel good. And I think that echoes a lot of what else is out there, right? And I don't think the front office feels that great about it either.
I don't think they do.
This is a team that needs a little bit of help. I wouldn't, sorry to say this about Max, who, I like and wanted to see perform better. I wouldn't feel good about seeing him come up late in the playoff game, especially with the caliber of left-handed pitchers that they could face.
I think they just have a lot of guys right now in the middle of that lineup who are miscast. Like I think JT Realmuto is a valuable player for them, but he probably should be batting like 8th.
His offensive game is not what it was. That is very true.
I think Bryson Stott is a valuable player for them, and I think he should be better than what he's been. I think he should be batting like 8th.
You know what it seems
I think
like?
Otto Kemp is like a useful major league bench player. I don't think he should be in the lineup every day.
Yeah. You know what it seems like happened here? It seems like the evolution or player progression or regression, whatever you'd like to term it as, the changing roles and skill sets, overall skill sets of some of these players maybe caught the team a little bit by surprise, or it happened faster than they were maybe anticipating, where they couldn't get out in front of it. You know, they're having to deal with this mid-season rather than making adjustments in an off-season ahead of a new season to try and, you know, be better protected against this. They haven't seen Bryson Stott bounce back to the form he had a couple of years ago. He's been fine, but he's been more like his other two major league years.
Of any of these guys, no, this I'm going to group them all together. Bohm, Castellanos, Kepler, Real Muto, Stott, Marsh. Of those guys, who is there a guy in there? Do you think who is the likeliest that you think is like, oh, this guy's going to have a big second half, or this guy can have a big second half? Is there anyone in that group that you'd feel comfortable saying, like, is it better than 50-50 odds that this guy has when I say a big second half, I mean, like, I don't know, an 800 OPS for the final 80 games of the season?
I'd hold out a little bit of hope for JT because I have seen him a couple of years now perform better down the stretch after playing a lot as a catcher, which kind of befuddles me, but maybe there's some more mysticism there. Maybe that could happen. And I think Alec Bohm's lack of power continues to stress me out a little bit, even on the double side. But I think the fact that he can put the bat on the ball a little bit better leads me to believe that he could do it too, and that he could be something of a stabilizer in the 5 or 6 spot. So those would be my picks. Do you have somebody who stands out there?
No. I don't know. Not than a better than 50-50 odds.
Okay. That's not a good situation to be in if that's the case. And then, you know, if that is an accurate read and the front office agrees, then I think we are looking at Justin Crawford sooner than later. Almost apart from Max Kepler having, you know, 5 homers in 4 games and making them think about it. It just seems maybe then closer, maybe a little bit more urgent that they do something now here at the very end of June, start of July, than wait.
I think this dire outlook is a great time to bring on our guest.
You know what? That's a good point. Let's shift gears ever so slightly. We'll be back with a special guest, Charlotte Varnes of The Athletic, after this quick little break. We'll see you then.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Our special guest today here on Phillies Therapy is none other than the latest addition to the Phillies beat. She's a graduate of Northwestern University, a Wildcat. She was most recently at the Star, the Indianapolis Star, and at the Chronicle in San Francisco. And now she's getting a taste of baseball life out east. She is Charlotte Varnes, staff writer for the Phillies at The Athletic, who has been with the team on this beat now for about 2 months or so. And she is kind enough to take a couple minutes to join us today here on Phillies Therapy. Charlotte, welcome, and thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul.
So here we are out east. We are not the Giants. We are not, we are not D1 baseball. We are an entity unto ourselves, so we like to think. What have been early on your first impressions of the Phillies ecosystem, the team, its fans, and the environment that surrounds this club?
Yeah, I I think I've been trying to take a moment every game to just kind of soak in the atmosphere at CBP because especially after covering the A's last year, which obviously there are a lot of reasons why fans were not attending A's games, but I just don't think I've ever really covered a team with as passionate of a fan base. And it's just been really, really incredible. I mean, I covered the Braves as an intern, but I just don't even think this compares. And I thought it would stack up to covering the Braves because the Braves have a lot of media around them. I think the Braves run the South really, like Florida, where I'm from. A lot of people are Braves fans, despite the Rays and Marlins existing. The Braves just kind of run the South. But I just think it doesn't even compare to what the Phillies mean to Philadelphia. It was insane. Like moving in, and there's Philly stuff on every block, and every game feels like a sellout. And I just think I even though I'd been watching the games on TV, obviously, and reading before I got here, I just have been really pleasantly shocked. And it's really cool to get to cover a team that means so much to its city for sure.
And so you mentioned that you did a little bit of work writing for the Braves. You covered the A's. When you saw that this opportunity popped up to write for the Athletic for the New York Times and its satellites here, and there was a Phillies beat opportunity. Was there anything in particular that drew you to this beat, or is it just you feel like there's a calling for you to cover baseball in general?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of both. I knew that I really wanted to be a baseball beat writer, and I knew I was runner up for the Athletics MLB internship last year, and I just like have always admired the coverage. So I just knew if I covered baseball, I really wanted to do it at the Athletic. And then I didn't know much about Philly, but I knew I wanted to be back on the East Coast for sure. And I feel like I was lucky to grow up watching a lot of the Phillies players. I grew up 20 minutes from national spring training. So it was kind of funny. I grew up watching Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber when he was briefly on the Nationals. Like a lot of those guys I watched growing up. So it was interesting feeling like even though I wasn't a Phillies fan, I feel like I sort of had a basis in who these guys were. But yeah, I've just been really pleasantly surprised. Like I just had been to Philadelphia once before as a sophomore in high school touring Penn. And I came here, had not even seen my apartment yet. And I just have really, really enjoyed it.
It took less than 5 minutes for Charlotte to make both of us feel old, Paul. That's all right, because it happens on a daily basis for me, and I appreciate that because I feel like she's giving me new perspective, I think.
I explained what a Snapchat streak was to Matt last week.
Really?
You didn't know.
I mean, I know what Snapchat is. I didn't know what a Snapchat streak is. I've never heard of that. I'm sorry.
No, there's nothing to apologize for. I can think back to when I was using, Snapchat with, my now wife and some of my other friends when we were, in our mid 20s and everything like that. I'm a little bit surprised to hear that it's still going because I left it behind. I guess that's my marker of feeling old at this point. But
no, I'm not really using it. It came up in conversation.
Well, I do think that's one of the more interesting aspects of covering a baseball team now. Like I was never on a beat necessarily. I just did a couple little freelance things here and there. I was never ingrained with a team or an organization like that. But with the rise and proliferation of social media and things like that, even if players aren't necessarily using Snapchat to interact with fans, we have avenues like Instagram, the former Twitter, and TikTok, and all of these things that really just sort of broaden coverage, but also allow players to just, I guess, go directly to fans and fan bases and things like that. Have you noticed, Charlotte, do you see that, I guess, as more of a help or a hindrance to trying to find stories to talk to guys about while you're traveling with them or while you're looking for columns and topics to put out?
That's a really interesting question. So far on this job, I feel like I haven't used it much. I don't know. I've noticed in recent years, I feel like a lot of guys have gotten off Twitter, which I think is probably a positive development because I just I don't know. I had a story come out about like sports betting and baseball the other day and was curious and was searching a couple players out of curiosity, and just some of the things that are tweeted at them are just like vile and horrible. But I think a lot of them are using Instagram for sure. And I have a professional account and follow a lot of the guys there. And yeah, I mean, it's helpful to see just the day to day of people's lives, potentially pick up on any story ideas. But so far on this beat, I haven't really used it a ton.
It's funny because I think your perspective on like, the sellouts and like the energy around the team is appropriate, but it's also funny because, uh, you know, the Phillies are known essentially for, their long and winded history of being, the most losing franchise in North America, right? I mean, the most losses in North American sports, and um, you
Hence
know,
the name of this podcast.
yeah, and I think like the average Philadelphia fan is predisposed to pessimism, I think, which is often warranted, but sometimes not. And Charlotte, you remind me of when, like I first started covering baseball, and like there's a proper amount of cynicism. It's not overly cynical. So how do you, I think, what's been your challenge maybe in like trying to figure out sort of the ethos of the Philly fan, but also, not necessarily play into that right away because, the I think sometimes I'm guilty of probably playing too much into it because I think I've seen, how people think and how people react, and maybe there's some overreaction to, some things that don't warrant it.
Yeah, I feel like by time in Oakland, it really, really tempered me. I know, like, at one game, I turned you and I was like, people complain a lot here, but I don't know. There are people who are literally getting their baseball teams taken away from them. And obviously,
Mm.
that's a pretty extreme example. But I feel like just getting to cover the A's and seeing how fans handled their team literally being taken away from them and all their players being traded away and just kind of rock bottom over the past few years. I think that has really tempered my. I understand why Phillies fans are cynical, but I think that has helped me not kind of lean into any overreaction at any point because I feel like it's helped me, especially as a writer, take a step back and be like, there are fan bases who have it so much worse, and obviously that's not necessarily the case over the course of all of Phillies history, but right now, I don't know. I just think about my time in Oakland a lot and think about how lucky Philadelphia is to have ownership and a team that is really invested in, and whereas obviously that is not the case in a lot of places.
I think I think that's an interesting point. Just to sorry, Matt, to jump right in front of you because it sparks something that I think is becoming something of a movement here with baseball fandom. It's a small one, but it's growing, and it's that we need to kind of broaden our sightlines around not just the team that we choose to follow necessarily. We've seen that with Michael Bauman at Fangraphs launching his externship program. We've tried to do it here on this show, being like, hey, look at some other teams for comparison and perspective here, because we can turn inward and look at the Phillies and say, oh, they're not hitting as many home runs, and that's frustrating. But we look up and we see they're still above average in offense across the league because there are other teams who are doing things too. We tend to kind of just turn inward and look only at the team as, a consequence of itself, when in reality, and this applies to fandom too, there are other things happening out there that we should pay a little bit of attention to.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that gave Charlotte also like because circumstances and mainly the New York Times kind of digging their feet in on the hire. Like, Charlotte didn't get to start this season, covering the Phillies in spring training, and she didn't even start on opening day covering the Phillies. So she kind of parachuted in May, which can be tough. And I'm wondering, Charlotte, like what the challenges, but maybe also um, the pros of that have been because I do, you came in without a lot of assumptions, I guess, maybe about the team, and maybe I don't know what there. I'm sure there's been challenges, but I also think that maybe it's helped with your perspective now.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought I would feel more prepared to parachute in, especially like interning over the past couple summers and hopping in to cover teams in the middle of their season. But I feel like it's very different here with the amount of media and just especially with how many people are at the home games. And I got to go to Miami a couple weeks ago, but it's just at times been kind of challenging to find guys or figure out what to do at home because it's just been extremely overwhelming. But for the most part, I was watching the games ahead of coming here, but I feel like again, it's just really, really different actually being at CBP. It comes across great on TV. But again, I was pretty stunned by that. And just being around the team, I again like have followed the course of Bryce Harper's career. But I just have been shocked at the whole ecosystem around Bryce. He's obviously been injured or just a lot has been going on the whole time I've been here. But I know that the rule Matt says, or other people on the beat say, is when in doubt, write about Bryce. And I think I've just been, even though I grew up watching him play, I've just been very impressed with the stardom around him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have a fallback like Bryce Harper, I guess, if you want to call it that. But you do have a wide variety of topics that you've written about so far on The Athletic. You know, you mentioned a few minutes ago, you had a story about gambling that centers around Keaton Anthony, the Phillies minor leaguer, who has really just hit his way through the system, ended up going undrafted because of his involvement in that investigation. You have a really nice detailed feature about that everybody should go check out from just a couple days ago. Do you find yourself drawn to any particular aspect of these stories? Is it something about a player off the field? Do you like getting into more of the tactical things on the field? Do you feel yourself really compelled to pick any one thing more than another? Or do you find it all comes to you pretty naturally and evenly?
Yeah, I think something I love is just like talking to people about failure, which can be really tough, obviously. But I
Hmm.
think like one of my favorite things I've done here is that after Mick Abel made his spot start, going to Allentown to talk with him, kind of just about how he was able to recover from such a bad 2024. And I just like, we had such a good conversation. I've like had follow up conversations with him for other stuff since. And like, I feel like he's someone who's pretty vulnerable and honest. And I feel like I have so much respect for people who are just like willing to be so open about difficult times in their life and kind of what got them out of there. And same with Keaton. I can say the same about him. It was like a very horrible time in his life dealing with sports betting. And I just think it's really interesting seeing how people handle failure, recover from failure, because obviously baseball is a game of so much failure. And those stories have been really interesting to me so far.
And I give Charlotte a lot of credit, Paul, because I mean, like I don't try to compare my experiences to hers all the time, but I mean, there's a lot of similarities here. I mean, we were about the same age when we first started covering baseball, and when I first started covering the Phillies in 2010, it was a very veteran, established team
Mm.
with big expectations that had a lot of media around it, and it was. I remember being, really difficult for me to break in just because I didn't have any relationships, and all the established players, had relationships with other people, and it could be a tough clubhouse just because I think the personality of that team was a little different than this one, but there are a lot of similarities, I think, and uh, so I think there's good and bad, and I've really enjoyed having Charlotte's perspective and just a different kind of viewpoint on it. And one of my favorite stories that she's done so far was early on, and she spent a decent amount of time working on a Ryan Kirkering story, and I think the timing was right, and ever since, there's a lot of different adjustments that Charlotte wrote about in that story, but I mean, he's really pitched well since then. And Charlotte, I know that was a story that you had thought a lot about, and seems like one that has stood up.
Yeah, again, it's always good when a story about a reliever stands up. He's pitched really well since then. I was a little worried. But no, that was like another situation, obviously writing about people going through tough times. And again, like with him graduating from college too, there was such an interesting angle to that of like the highest of highs and lowest of lows at the same time. Yeah, and he's just like a really smart guy and really thoughtful about pitching. And it was just cool getting to talk to him about that. And especially because, like, I don't know, I've really enjoyed talking to relievers on all the teams I've covered. I just think they've really, really interesting stories. And Orion and these guys, it's the same case with them. And I think they often don't get their due. I really enjoyed doing that.
One question I have is, so you covered the A's final season in Oakland last year. They fell short of making the playoffs. Have you covered MLB playoff games previously?
No, so I interned in Atlanta the fall the Phillies and the Braves met in 2023.
Okay.
And I was supposed to cover the postseason, but I ran the Chicago Marathon and I came back the
Oh,
day they played in Atlanta. And my editor was like, "You cannot cover a game the day after running a marathon," which in hindsight, he was absolutely right.
It's
I
a
would
nice
have been falling
flex.
over.
yeah.
If it
Wow.
had gone to a game 5, I believe I would have covered that in Atlanta, but it did not. So I've not
Okay.
been in the playoffs.
Okay. So I was going to ask you about what you think your expectations might be for being in Philadelphia for one of these playoff games, assuming the Phillies make it. But you just mentioned something much more interesting. Let's talk about you for a second here. You ran a marathon?
Yeah, I did the Chicago Marathon in fall 2023, and I'm actually doing New York City Marathon this fall, which is
Wow.
November 2nd. Yeah.
What's Game 7 in the World Series?
Don't say that. November 1st.
Wow. Oh,
what are the odds that the Phillies are playing in Game 7 of the World Series, Paul?
Well, now that they've broken the barrier for having a Game 7 in their history,
That's
period,
true.
No, I don't know. Maybe they'll play. Maybe they'll play 2 Game 7s.
They'll play 3 Game 7s this year.
3 Game 7s? Yeah, I don't know.
No, you can only play 2. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
No. So, all right. So, running, has that been a thing? Most of your life? Obviously, you have to have a good deal of passion for it if you're able to run a marathon length. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I ran cross country in high school, and both my parents were runners. My dad actually puts on like marathons and triathlons for a living. My mom ran Boston several years when I grew up, so we would always go to Boston with her. So I think I kind of got the itch from them. I like didn't compete at college or anything, but just ran for fun through college and Chicago my senior year. I've sort of been on a break since then, just like trying different things out because I'm wary of like, I don't know, obviously I'm young, but I like don't want to put too much stress on my knees or anything. And I literally applied to the New York City Marathon because I thought I wouldn't get in. It has a 2% acceptance rate. And then that credit card charge hit my account. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm training for another marathon, which I'm excited for, but I was not expecting it at all.
Where's been your favorite place to run in Philly so far?
I haven't run on the Schuylkill much, but I've been running along like Pine and Spruce to the Schuylkill, which has been nice.
Great streets.
Yeah, I'm going to ramp up in the next couple weeks. And I think like right after the All-Star break or right around that is when I need to like actually start training.
There is, in a bit of Philly lore, a Philadelphia institution, a blogging institution named Dan McQuaid, came up with a route that closely maps what Rocky Balboa ran in Rocky 2.
You should do the Rocky run.
You should try the Rocky run. He's got an article on it in Philly Mag from, I'm looking at this now, back in 2013. And then he rehashed it for Defector, his current outlet, in 2023. That would be something to check out. And also, it's probably a little hard to talk while running or even after running, but I wonder are there any other players on the team who take up to running quite like, I know Roy Halladay famously would run the warning track.
Roy, my God.
He would run all
ran
the time.
The steps every time we were on the road. Roy would run the stadium steps the day after he pitched.
Have you noticed that with any of the other players? Is there a connection with running there at all? Obviously not Zach Wheeler, famously the dad bod starting pitcher king. Have you noticed that with any other players, anything like that yet?
Aaron Nola, they've been talking about him distance running amid his injuries, but I'm not really sure how far distance running is. So I should check in with him about that. Otherwise,
distance running for baseball players is generally pole to pole.
Yeah, I was like, I just don't. Yeah.
The one guy, I mean, this is, what a thing to say this, but I mean, the one guy who actually really enjoys running and would run probably more than anyone was Alvarado. Alvarado. He's not passed, but he's just not around right now.
He's fueled by the caffeine.
He would run, and I'd watch him. I mean, he ran probably more than anyone on the team. Well, so now that you've been here for almost 2 months, I mean, can you get a feel for what the summer is going to be like, and what are you excited for the rest of the season, and how much do you hate working with me so far?
Okay, I don't hate working with you, despite every person when I say I'm working with Matt Gelb, they say good luck with that. But it's been good. No. But yeah, I'm just so excited to get on the road in the second half. Obviously only been to Miami in the first half, so I just am really, really looking forward to traveling. I know I've never been to Yankee Stadium, so that's obviously going to be a big one around the trade deadline too. So I'm looking forward to that. 5 days in Milwaukee will be really fun. One of my best friends from college lives there, and it's around Labor Day, so the weather there is going to be amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I don't know. I'm just curious to see how all of this unfolds. I can't offer any predictions or anything, but I don't know. I'm curious. This will be my first like actual trade deadline. I feel like last year in Oakland, I remember I was like at a cafe and I saw Passan and tweeted that a couple A's players have been traded. And I'm like, okay, guess I have to write it now. But I think it's going to be really different covering the Phillies than covering the A's.
Yeah, hopefully a little more inflow than outflow with this team in particular at this trade deadline. But we'll see what July brings, I guess. And with that, I think we'll wrap up our time here with Charlotte. You can read Charlotte stuff over on The Athletic. Charlotte Varnes joining the Phillies beat and taking on coworkership with Matt Gelb. Charlotte, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to talk with us today. It really was a pleasure. And best of luck the rest of the way this summer on the beat.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt and Paul.
Our thanks once again to The Athletic's Charlotte Varnes, the latest addition to the Phillies beat over at The Athletic, Matt's new coworker. Wonderful new addition. It's really nice to have multiple writers on the beat again. This is a team that, warrants that kind of coverage, and there's enough personality and stories, certainly, to hear all about that.
Yeah, neither of us were in Atlanta this past weekend, but we should be pretty much at every road series the rest of the way.
All right.
One of us. So
love to hear that.
Really excited for what we have in store for the rest of the year, and plenty of things to write about. I got one last thing for you here.
Yeah, go for it.
So the Washington Nationals just announced that they have a new jersey patch.
Okay.
And honestly, the jokes are going to write themselves. They have partnered with AARP for their jersey patches.
Oh my gosh. Why?
I don't know, but their whole thing has been next gen attitude, and now,
oh my god, yeah, clearly next generation, right? All right, good stuff.
What a shame, because James Wood is unbelievable.
He's fun, man.
He is an unbelievable player, and man, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. How about the fact that the Marlins are a half game behind the Braves right now?
The NL East is interesting. That much I will say. Oh, all right. I think that'll do it here on the last day of June 2025. Thanks as always for listening, everybody. If you want more, you can always check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Phillies Therapy, where we have a vibrant and thriving Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of. I don't know what our plan is for next week necessarily. I know I will be on vacation, but might find a little time to
do something. Where are you going?
Yeah, we're going to the Outer Banks down the Carolinas.
Nice.
So that'll
I'll be in San Francisco.
Ooh, out by the bay. That's great. Hopefully everybody stays cool with the second heat. Well, it's not quite as severe as last week, so that's good. And stay cool out east here.
The earth is just perpetually hot.
Yeah, it's just warm. It's just warm all the time. But hopefully you stay cool out there. And the Phillies are coming home for a little bit. If you get out to the ballpark, have a great time. Be safe. Thank you again for listening. This has been Phillies Therapy, part of the Believe Podcast Network. For Matt, I am Paul. We'll see you guys next week.